And welcome to an edition of Try Knoxville. Another episode as we're starting to record things, and you can see my guest with me today. No stranger at Knoxville community, McKay is here with us today, and she grew up here. She's chose to live here, and that's what Try Knoxville is all about. We want not just our locals to stick around, but we want them to come back too. And you ventured out. You did the school thing and everything else. But tell us about your childhood. I know you and I have had several conversations in the past, but tell everybody who hasn't been a part of the shows before. Tell us what Megan's been doing all her life.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I grew up in Knoxville. My family was fourth generation insurance agency here in town. And so, grandparents were here, great grandparents were here. And we were fortunate to have a business downtown. And so always felt a really big part of the community. I was really lucky, I think, to grow up outside of town, out by Lake Red Rock in the Painted Rocks development. And so had a great childhood out in nature and kind of running around the woods looking for mushrooms and doing all kinds of fun things. But, got to couple that with also really being active in the community as a kid, coming up for Ridiculous Days or Rotary breakfasts and those sorts of things. So, yeah, it was, kind of an idyllic small town childhood, really.
It worked out pretty well, and again, I was part of that Ridiculous Days and everything else. Even as a farm kid, we still come in town and kind of check things out a little bit. But you mentioned growing up in Painted Rocks, and did you feel? I know I did as a farm kid. That it was a different type of community even when you came to town. I mean, your family had a business here in town, but when you come to town, you're like, wow, these are people my age I've never even met before. Did you have that going on?
No, I wouldn't say I had that a ton. I mean, my best friend out there was Melissa Cook. She moved away when we were in sixth grade, but otherwise it was a bunch of boys in the neighborhood. And so she and I hung out a lot. But I think, we did a lot in town as far as having play dates with different people, or, I was active in like Brownie Scouts or dance or, whatever else, basketball, those sorts of things. So I always felt pretty connected. And I think part of it was just, I wouldn't necessarily always ride the bus home either. Sometimes I'd walk to my dad's office and stay there after school and then, come home after whatever activity was going on, soccer or whatever. So no, I don't think I was as separated as some of the farm kids. I didn't have a lot of chores and those sorts of things at home, for better or worse, I guess. But yeah, but I can see how you can be.
Did you get your work ethic from hanging out at Dad's office?
Yeah, I think so. I always had really good role models. My, great-grandmother, Vera, she was at the office every day until she was into her 90s. And then even after that, I can remember my Aunt Kathy bringing the checkbook over to her apartment to check over things and make sure things were good. And she was always really active in the community. Unfortunately, my Grandpa Bob passed pretty early, and so I didn't see that quite as much. But they were always really active people. And then, of course, my parents, my mom was a school nurse forever, but she worked part-time, but I would say she probably had a full-time plus job doing different things like delivering Meals on Wheels or, helping other people out doing things that weren't necessarily traditional jobs, but she was always very busy and industrious. And, of course, my dad, being an entrepreneur and having a small business and always trying to find new ways to grow that business in a small town that wasn't necessarily growing. I think, those were all really heavily, things that heavily influenced me.
Where'd you go to college at afterwards?
Yeah, so I went, I moved out to California to be a nanny for a little while. I went to a community college for a bit, and then I finished that up when I came back to Iowa at Kirkwood. So I did my associates there to make sure I got all the credits together. And then I finished up at University of Iowa with a bachelor's in management and organizations.
How long were you out in California?
I was there about 4 years.
Like it?
Yeah, I did.
Where at?
I was up in Northern California, so it was a very different place. The people I nannied for were also insurance agents, so that was pretty familiar. They lived in a really nice little town called Pleasanton, so it wasn't, I wasn't in the city right away. But I always have liked the hustle and bustle of the city. I lived in Oakland for a little bit and in San Francisco for a small period of time. It was interesting to see how different people were. I think, excuse me, there was always, especially in some of the areas, there was a harshness that we don't have here. There was a veneer that you always had to kind of put on. You didn't smile and talk to people when you walked down the street. You didn't really make eye contact with people because you didn't know if they were trying to take advantage of you in some way, whether they were looking for money or homeless or whatever. And so you kind of had to have this hard, crusty exterior that was really not my nature. So it's, I just think some of those things and, getting around was a little harder. Those those sorts of things. But for the most part, I mean, it was beautiful. It was near the ocean. The weather was perfect. I met a lot of really interesting people, from all different walks of life and backgrounds. And I think it really made me appreciate that we can live in Knoxville, Iowa. We kind of have this little bubble, but you have no idea what it's like to be a Black woman who's a single mother who lives in a drug-infested neighborhood.
Right.
And when we make policy decisions or we make, have ideas about how things should go, we have to think about the bigger picture and that not everyone lives as easily as we do in Knoxville.
We are truly blessed. I had the opportunity to go out to California for a race last year. In fact, a year ago this next month, and it rained out a couple of different races out there, so we had an opportunity to vacation a little bit, if you will. And I made the comment to my wife that I've never seen something so beautiful but yet so devastating at the same time, because literally on one side of the road you had this majestic mountains and tree lines and everything else, and then on the other side of the road you had homeless. And I never will forget the signage I seen out there. It was a $1,000 fine for pollution on highways out there, but I guarantee you every highway had an old mattress that was thrown out. It was totally amazing, and it shocked me a little bit just to see. And then we went to San Francisco, and holy cow.
Yeah, and it's changed a lot over the years. I was back about 5 years ago, and just, really, it has changed a lot, but it's always been kind of that mecca for just a really different type of people, whether a lot of homeless population, a lot of drugs, but then also you have this great epicenter of technology and creativity and everything else. So
and wine country out there.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. When you travel, I kind of getting off track here a little bit, but when you travel and you go out back to California where you've seen, 20, 25 years ago, whatever it was, and then when you come back, I always get this when I travel to different racetracks around the country, I should say. And I come back, it's like, wow, there's no place like Knoxville. Do you get that sense around you too? Like, when you go to bigger cities, like, we got it made at home.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's certain things that I miss. Like, I'm a big fan of different ethnic foods. I'm always liking to try new things. I always, it's not that I get bored with everything, but I guess a little bit. So it's just, and I've always been really interested in culture and different people from different places.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, Knoxville's a little tough for me sometimes because everybody tends to kind of hold on to want things to stay the same or be the way they always have been, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my personality. But I do think there's a great sense of, man, life's easy here. I mean, you can run over to the grocery store quick. If you need help with something, you can call somebody and they're almost always willing to, lend a hand or a forklift or whatever else. We don't have to worry about going out and walking around and being, safe and free and all of those things. People are friendly. People do say hello to you on the street, all of those things. So, I think there is a lot to be grateful for. And I think it's, I made the choice to come back in 2001 and, had some opportunities to maybe make some changes here the last few years and kind of doubled back down and I'm staying here. So, there's something that always brings me back.
You come back, you get in the insurance business right away. Mm-hmm. Why not stay in the insurance business? Like you said, 4 generations, but eventually you peeled away from that. Yeah,
I think, there was really a crossroads there. We had the brewery, had been going for about 5 years. Right. My dad was ready to retire. Scott and I weren't married anymore. And so we kind of just needed to make some changes in how we were operating those two businesses together. The brewery was at a point where we either needed to have somebody full-time manage it and run it and really grow it.
Right.
It's really capital intensive, and we needed to have some growth for that to be a going concern. Or we needed to look at selling it. It was, I think for me personally, it was really difficult to, every time I was at the insurance office, I felt like I should be doing things at the brewery. And every time I was at the brewery, I felt guilty for not being at the insurance office. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, when I really kind of analyzed that, I don't think my dad was super happy with me for making the choice I made. But in hindsight, the insurance agency was going to continue whether I was there or not.
Exactly.
It's been there a long time. I felt really comfortable with Todd and with Scott and, Darcy and Tanya and everybody who was there. I just knew that they were going to do a good job and continue on. And I've probably added what I could add to that.
Right. But you had the mountain over here in the brewery.
Brewery, it seems like the more fun choice.
Right.
But it also was the more challenging choice. And I like to build things and I like a challenge and I like to solve problems. And I felt like if I didn't jump in and do that, it was going to be hard for my dad to recoup his investments. It was going to be hard to sell it to somebody else and have it stay in Knoxville, and that was kind of the whole reason we did it.
Right.
And I just felt really committed to what we were making and doing there. And people will say it's just beer, but to me, really what we're making is community. And that's kind of where my heart is. So that's why I chose that. For better or worse, some days it doesn't feel like the right choice. I think I'd play a lot more golf and probably be more financially secure in the insurance business, but this ticks all my buckets.
I will be completely honest with you. I think I've mentioned this to you before. I was completely shocked when you went the direction of the brewery, because it was the challenge, it was the mountain. Then I got to think back and think, you know what? She does like the challenges. And I look at this, and I remember when your dad brought the idea to the city about the brewery, and you guys did the huge remodeling. I mean, unbelievable. And when it all went into place, it's like, wow, this is going to work out pretty good for Knoxville, because it brings in, and I'll use my experience. For a short time, I was working with James Washington at KVA, and we had to deal with the State Historical Preservation Office. And we had 4 gentlemen come down and tour the VA with me one day. And as soon as we were done, we kind of went through a rapid tour for some reason. They were in a hurry. They weren't in a hurry for the tour. They were in a hurry to get down to Peachtree, because they had heard all about it and they wanted to try it out. Yeah. I mean, it brings people from not just local community, but from out of town.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we probably had more business from out of town than we did in town. I think craft beer was kind of a new thing. People weren't really sure what to do with it. And again, kind of that whole idea of like small town Knoxville, people are a little slower to change or embrace stuff that's different. Right. I certainly feel like we have that support now, but it was we kind of had to go out and get that outside validation. And then people kind of started to take us a little more seriously, I think. You
mentioned your mom earlier, and we talk about your dad's work ethic and your mom doing things throughout the community that weren't necessarily work. You've got both of that instilled in you, because you volunteer like no other. I've seen you on different committees, different boards. Are you still on the hospital board too, or not? I mean, I lose track. I can't keep up with you anymore.
No, I'm still on the hospital board. So I'm in my 12th year. Yeah. I've been the chair for the last couple of years, and I really enjoy being on the hospital board. It brings me a lot of joy just to see the changes that we've made out there. You take an organization that really was at its lowest point about the time I came on the board, and we made some really hard changes, things that hadn't been done in 40 years, as far as changing our management company and bringing in new management. And it was really kind of make or break. It was like, we're either going to lose this hospital or we're going to get this figured out. And thank goodness Kevin Kincaid decided to come back. Mercy's been a great partner. Maggie jumping on board on the finance side, and just to see that, our role as a board has changed quite a bit too. It used to be we were pretty hands-on trying to figure things out, and now I feel like it's kind of an easy gig. They seem to be anticipatory of any questions or any issues that we have, and they really have the best interest of the community and of the staff, and right. The long-term future of the facility in their mind. And I know that's been hard. Culture change is tough. It's hard to get people kind of to turn that corner, both internally, but then also just for the public. And I'm super proud of that.
I don't want to call this a tough move, but how? I don't want to say tough. Tough's not the word. How important was it that we landed Kevin Kincaid? I mean, again, back to Knoxville boy. He graduated here, but he'd been gone quite a while.
Yeah, he'd been gone quite a while. I think through the interview process, what I saw there was his passion to come back to Knoxville and be involved. And he hadn't been a hospital CEO before. Some of the Mercy brass was kind of like, maybe you should choose somebody who's got a little more experience. You guys are in a really tough spot right now. Sure. You can't afford to have some new guy come in and not know what he's doing. And we listened to that a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, like, passion and intention sometimes wins out over having done that exact job before. Right. And Kevin is very, for a hospital administrator, he's very entrepreneurial. He's a very creative thinker. He thinks about the big picture and the long-term actions that he's taking. And I think you don't see that often in hospital administrators. And then to have that coupled with the fact that this is his hometown, this is where he wants to see his, kids grow up. This is where his friends are, and you put those two together, and it's unstoppable.
Everybody wants to make the almighty dollar, just like your business. You want to make money so you can keep going. But at the same time, I see this in you as well. You're concerned with what your business is going to do to the community and how it's going to affect the community. When you guys opened up Peachtree, when that went forward, there was the old stigmatism. It's a bar. No, it's not a bar. It's a bar. It's not a bar. In fact, you had a little bit of a fight on your hands.
Yeah.
To determine what it was going to be used for.
Yeah.
And as it worked out, it's exactly what you guys said it was going to be used for. It's a gathering place for not just 21 and older.
Right. I think, I've always taken, and maybe this is a little bit from traveling, is that alcoholic beverages are not necessarily just to go and like get wasted. We've done it. Everybody does it. Maybe not everybody, but there's certainly that part of the alcohol beverage industry. But there's also this whole other part that's really about connecting with other people, sharing a beverage. It takes a little while to drink a beer. And so it's a great time to kind of have a conversation. I think especially with craft beer, you can quickly start up a conversation with somebody just about, oh, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? And all of a sudden you have a new, connection or friendship made. And I think I really took that whole European mindset of, drinking is not bad. It's just part of the social part of life. Mm-hmm. And so you teach your kids well, you model good behavior to them. I don't think there's anything wrong with, kids being in our establishment because it's we're responsible and we're showing good behavior, and that you can have a beer or two and still, be fully functional and be a good member of society. It's
not growing up the Beverly Hillbillies and sipping the whiskey out of the jug and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes there's just this connotation, and I get it even from other people sometimes, of like, oh, you run a bar, that's, terrible. And it's like, well, it is what it is, mm-hmm. but, come in and have a root beer. Yeah. Come in and have an iced tea. Listen to some live music, talk to some people. And I think, what you'll find is that really at the underside of it is just that community and that connection. And I think even more so now than any other time, people are realizing how much they miss that you can have your work, you can have church, you can have your family or school, but you need those places where you can kind of just accidentally run into people and learn new things, get a different perspective, and just make connections that you wouldn't otherwise. And I think, bars and restaurants are important places for that.
Exactly right. When we interviewed 5 years ago, whenever it was, you were looking at just taking another step to expand the business. And I believe it was Des Moines.
Probably.
Yeah. And that has happened since then. And another expansion to Grinnell.
Yep.
Tell us about we talked about the Des Moines, but tell us how we got into Des Moines, then why in the world did we end up in Grinnell?
Yeah. So Des Moines was pretty calculated. Again, I had just sold out of the insurance business, right. And was taking over the brewery full time and kind of realizing that, okay, this is how I'm going to make my income and hopefully retire someday and put a kid through college. And it was kind of that, oh crap moment of I'm not going to be able to do it with what we have here if we don't, make some changes. Right. The craft brewing industry had changed quite a bit too. I don't know how many breweries there were at that time. Now we're over 100. And for us in Knoxville, we just were not considered part of the Des Moines market anymore. And so we were seeing kind of our taproom business drop off a little bit. As new breweries come in, people always want something new and different and exciting. And, we weren't really kind of keeping up with that. And right. So the Des Moines opportunity was really about how do we get Joe to be able to do some more interesting beers on a smaller system. We were having trouble keeping up with just consistent production of our core brands. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't allowing experimentation and fun and different things coming out. So we wanted to build a separate brewery for him to be able to do that, but it didn't make sense to do it in Knoxville since the population just isn't enough to support that. So we started looking at Des Moines, and so that made a lot of sense, and it put us right back in the middle of the craft beer epicenter, which had kind of shifted, or coalesced around the metro center. So Des Moines has been really good. We've grown our fan base up there quite a bit. We've been able to, be a little more higher profile. When the news media has a question about something, this or that, we actually have a location in Des Moines so they can come down and ask our opinion or, put us on, which, they were kind of starting to not do because who wants to drive 45 minutes
right.
when you can go 5? And I think just, again, kind of building that community in the East Village has been really, really fun. It's very different than Knoxville. Really, we've had to kind of relearn our business completely, but it's been a good step for us.
Was there resistance by other breweries up there? Was there the challenge, if you will?
No, I think, I guess we didn't really ask permission. We just kind of said, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
There wasn't a brewery on that side of town necessarily. Confluence is pretty close. We've always had a really good relationship with them. I think for the most part, for craft brewers who came up in the time that we came up, there was very much this sense of, we're going to do this together, right. Because even if all of us are really successful, we're still a tiny speck on the beer spectrum.
You're not Budweiser.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's better for us to work together, and we do bike rides back and forth between each other, or we, share customers and just try to do different things to help each other out. Because if we grow craft beer, we all win a little more. So that wasn't a big issue. I got a little pushback from a couple of restaurants, maybe individual managers at restaurants of, well, now you're competing with us. We don't want to sell your beer. And it's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, but
changes later on. Again, jump into Des Moines, bigger metro area, and then all of a sudden we jump back down to a smaller community.
Yeah, so Grinnell, Delphina Bauman was redoing a building up there, and I think it was really inspirational to me. She was in like their economic development group up there, and then decided to leave that and actually go do her own building, and kind of wanted to invest her own money and help Grinnell out. They'd done a couple of surveys, and they wanted a bakery, a brewery, and a workout facility or fitness place. Her building really didn't fit the workout place. Somebody else was already working on the bakery, and so she went out and just kind of started calling breweries, and got led to me by a couple different places, one through the State Historical Society, and one through the Brewers Guild. And, she called probably in February, right after we opened Des Moines. I was knee deep in that and really didn't have that quite figured out. So I told her no, but then I said, well, I'll come up and look at it and at least maybe give you some ideas and maybe tell you who might not be a good partner, just because she seemed like a nice lady. And she had the same ideas that we had in Knoxville about buy a building, clean it up, use it as a little spark of economic development. And then the more I got to know Grinnell, they really have their ducks in a row. They do a really good job of development. They do a really good job of working with the college, their institution, and it seemed like a good learning opportunity for me. So what can I learn from Grinnell that I can bring back to Knoxville was part of it. And then, also it just felt like that was a community that would be supportive of what we were doing. So we went ahead and decided to open up there, probably a little quicker than I should have, or, in hindsight, but we did it, and it's a great tap room, and it's been well received in the community. So
you've got things going. Knoxville's going, Des Moines going, Grinnell's going. You're back on the Chamber of Commerce for a little while. Everything just kind of seems to be flowing into place. And then COVID-19 happens.
Yeah.
About, we can kind of laugh about it. It's not funny, but at the same time, it's like the brakes are on. It's the same for everybody.
Right.
The whole world has changed now. And one of the first announcements was bars and restaurants, you're closed.
On my birthday.
Happy birthday.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was a pretty surreal day.
How first of all, I'm fortunate enough to be in the media business where we weren't closed. We're considered the quote unquote essential, but still things change. I had to adjust where my employees were and everything else. Air brake time for you. Talk about running into literally a wall. What was your first instinct? Besides, this is my birthday, what are we doing here?
Well, we kind of were seeing that coming. And
right.
So we actually had made the decision to close that Monday and Tuesday anyway. And then the announcement was made on Tuesday to close. It's a particularly tough time. Last year was really kind of our worst financial year. We had planned for a lot of growth. We didn't really see that on the wholesale side. And so it's doubly bad. That plus
right.
We're coming off the winter, which is, we're depleting all our cash reserves when you go through the winter because you're,
it's
just slow.
Yep.
And you're starting to ramp up so that you can meet production needs that you need in March, April, May, as you start to get going forward. And then, of course, we were planning our 10-year anniversary party for March 21st or whatever the date was going to be. So yeah, we really had been kind of watching and thinking about that. And again, back to kind of, our hospital here in town, I had emailed Dr. Haynes and Kevin Kincaid and said, my anniversary party's in 8-9 days. What do you guys think I should do? And so we were really starting to think about that a little before,
sure.
Which was good or bad. And it was kind of interesting. I got different answers, and they were like, do it, no, don't do it. And it changed over even the course of that Friday. And so that really started to give me pause about, okay, next week we're going to have to start making some hard decisions. And then, of course, the governor announcement came out. From the very beginning, and, right or wrong, but I guess I've read some other things too, and as this has all been unfolding, my number one goal was I have to protect Peachtree. Right. And that sounds harsh, and I have always said like my employees are my number one asset, and they're the people that I care about the most, and I do. Mm-hmm. But man, my messaging and my conversations with all of them was, I have to protect Peachtree first. And that means we're going to have to make some hard decisions. But if I don't do that, I don't have any place for you to come back to.
Exactly
and
right.
I have no way to take care of you.
Yeah.
So I think, we've been able to keep morale up really well, but I cut all my bar staff on March 17th. None of them have been back to work other than my taproom managers. They've been doing curbside pickup. Susie Heiser, who's our retail manager, has done a phenomenal job of, basically taking all of our products and revamping our online store. So now we can actually sell beer online, and then you can pick it up at your convenience. We've transitioned with our distributors as much as we can, trying to transition from draft to package. Our cooler's pretty full of kegs right now, but we'll keep working on figuring out how to get through that. But I think it's just, you just go through and, okay, what expenses can I cut? What can I get rid of?
Right.
And what can we start selling that maybe we haven't been before? How can we sell it in a different way so we can manage through this? And we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, but we've been fortunate to get some of the PPP funding. So I've got some people back on. I cut my marketing person and my sales guy right away as well, just to start preserving cash, and they're back now.
Right.
But I don't know what that's going to look like, in the long term. And so that's what the scary part is. And I think as these closures keep kind of getting extended, it's like, how long will that last? And even if we could open back up, should we?
Oh, exactly. Restaurants are facing that this weekend.
Yeah. And then will people come back?
Right.
So, you kind of just throw all the plans out the window. But I think we're, trying to just communicate a lot and make good decisions.
I think you hit the nail right on the head on protecting the foundation. Peachtree is the foundation. Without a foundation, there's no building. It
Right.
doesn't stand. The creativity you've had to go in lengths of and try different things out. Some work, some don't work.
Yeah.
But at least it keeps people paying attention to what's going on as well. If the governor comes out middle of May and says, all right, now our tap rooms, our bars can start opening up, I'm assuming you have a plan in place of what you think it's going to be like. I know you you talk to Iowa restaurants and stuff like that, but
yeah. So I've been taking a ton of feedback from all different places. We're probably rolling a survey out actually today to our customers, just to kind of ask them, what do they want to see in place? What would make them feel safe? What do they think about their timing? When would they come back? Even if we can open May 16th, would they come back or would they wait? And just trying to get some more data. And I'd like to say I had a plan today, but you kind of have to wait because things change so quickly.
it's a day by day.
We have a meeting set for next Tuesday to talk to all our taproom managers, and we've gathered all kinds of data on best practices, both from the Brewers Association, Iowa Restaurant Association, CDC, OSHA, to kind of figure out what that will look like when we can open back up. I made an investment this week. If anybody's driven by, we have a giant mud hole right now.
I see.
I had Chad Cushman come in and dig me a big trench, and we're going to be planting some grasses and a tree, just kind of warm up that parking lot and make it a little more of a beer garden. So we're kind of prepping to be able to have more space outside. Mm-hmm. I just think it's going to be a lot of, extra sanitation, keeping people apart as much as possible. And I don't know if we'll open May 16th or not. We'll kind of wait and see. But for now, we've had some fun partnering with different people and kind of being creative about, offering meals to go through Murphy's Plate, or, in Des Moines, we've been able to partner with Blue Gate Farms and have them do kind of a little mini farmers market. They had 125 people drive through last night to
Nice.
get vegetables and cheese. And so we'll just keep plugging away. And, like I said, you just have to kind of take it a day at a time.
We're just in a life as it takes it. I started this show before all this hit, and the purpose of the show is get people to come in and try Knoxville, and then you close up everything.
Yeah.
And what's there to try? When we finally do get to a point where it's acceptable to do some things and not do some things, and we've changed our lifestyle around social distancing, I want Megan McKay to tell me the number one reason why you still try Knoxville.
I think it's just hospitality is a word that I always come back to a lot. And I think I thought Hannah did a great job when she kind of did some of the marketing plans around the chamber. And another word that always came back was gritty, which I think you can take that in a couple of different ways, but I think it's an awesome word.
Yeah.
And I think it really explains we're really nice, we're really friendly, we really want you here, but we're real. We're not afraid to get dirty and roll our sleeves up and get to work. And we're going to kind of tell you like it is. And I think those two things combined make it a really wonderful place.
Do you feel comfortable Knoxville survives all this COVID-19 craziness?
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, I think I've seen people pulling together a little more than they usually have, which has been nice. I think, I've realized that maybe I've been fortunate to have some resources that I haven't shared as much as I could sometimes. I sit on the Iowa Economic Development Board. I'm in a Goldman Sachs program right now. I've got a pretty good network between my Grinnell location and my Des Moines location, and so hearing different things that different businesses are doing, I've been trying to kind of pass those on to our local businesses as it makes sense. And so I think if we all just kind of take that mindset of we all probably have a bunch of knowledge and information that we could share. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure we're sharing it with our friends and neighbors here, because we together collectively are going to be the ones that make this survive or not.
I know you've got an appointment coming up. I want to thank you for coming in. I appreciate you all the time and everything you do.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.
We'll keep on plugging away at this and inviting everybody to try out Knoxville. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks.